preachers who are saying things like this are not doing their flock any favors by arming them with this super poor evidence. Like, you can make a good case for the existence of Jesus without lying or without using shoddy evidence. Just use the right evidence, you know? Hello, and welcome to another episode of Reason to Doubt, your source for all things skeptical. I'm your host, Jordan. With me, as always, is my co-host, Jared. How's it going, Jared?
It is going very well. And yourself?
Going pretty well. Going under the knife on Friday. Gonna get my gums all cut up.
Nice. That sounds amazing. Actually, it doesn't. I apologize, but I hope
it's gonna be a blast.
Yeah.
So, good thing we're recording now, so I'm not spraying blood all over my monitor.
So we may have a week or two pause before the next episode comes out.
I think I'll be good for the next episode.
Yeah.
We'll see. Anyways, so today we are going to follow on the episode we did 2 episodes ago. We talked about the things that atheists get wrong and things we wish they would stop sharing or stop saying. Like we mentioned at the time, that was challenging to come up with that list because it's always more difficult to look at it on yourself. So this time we're going to take the easy road and we're going to sharpshoot the other side. So today we're talking 9, since we did 9 for the atheists, we're doing 9 things we wish theists or religious people would stop saying.
And this list was not difficult to come up with. In fact, we came up with it within like 5 minutes. So
yeah, this list was much, much easier. I think it's going to be fun. Yeah. So before we dive into that, as always, today's episode is brought to you by the ought-is fallacy. Not to be confused with the is-ought fallacy, which is a different fallacy.
Different fallacy, completely. Yeah, this one is also known as the wishful thinking. So it conflates the way that you wish things were with the way that things are. So
it's kind of like an emotional thing, like you want something to be true, so therefore it is true. Some examples would be like, well, I know that there's a God because if there wasn't a God, life would be meaningless.
Yeah. Or you could say, I don't care what you say. Trump won the election. He's our president.
Right. Because I really want him to be president.
This reminds me of what my grandfather used to tell me. You can wish in one hand, shit in the other, and see which one fills up faster.
Right. So this one is very common, I think, among lay people. If you just like ran up to somebody in the street and started questioning their beliefs after they told you to screw off and, go, jump in a well or whatever, you'd probably end up with a lot of this sort of thinking, particularly if someone hasn't really thought deeply about their position, because it's very easy to make the jump from this is how I want things to be, or even like it makes you feel better to believe this, so you believe it. So I think it should be pretty self-evident why this is fallacious. There's a big difference between I wish this was true, or I would like for this to be true, or wouldn't it be nice if it were true, and this is actually true. Because if you're not aware, the world sucks, and many, many times what you want to be true isn't true.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. There's a lot of things I wish were true.
Yeah.
Like for Sasquatch. Instance, I wish Sasquatch was true.
Bigfoot? You wish Bigfoot existed?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be cool. Just like some big, like unknown thing out in the woods, kind of.
Yeah, I imagine like if it did exist, it'd probably be like a tribe of Neanderthals that somehow survived.
Yeah, kind of like the missing link or something. Like, or I don't know if you ever saw the movie Harry and the Hendersons. Like,
no, I don't think I saw that one.
A great one from the 80s, but
or maybe it'd be like Caveman Lawyer, the SNL skit. Yeah,
nice. Yeah,
yeah. But speaking of things that I wish were true, I wish it would be true that religious people would stop saying these things to me.
What are these things that they would stop saying, though?
So the first one, and this one I get all the time, constantly. It comes in mainly 2 flavors. The first one is the more like layman version. Deep down, you really believe that there's a God. Or if we're talking to someone who's more like a precept or an apologist, they'll tell me that I'm suppressing the truth and unrighteousness.
Yeah. This one, so first of all, you got to be pretty bold to like say this to somebody, you'd be pretty confident to tell somebody that you don't believe what you believe and actually you believe something different. Like,
and boy, are they confident.
Yeah.
Because so this stems, I think, at least on the Christian side, from a verse in the book of Romans, chapter 1, verse 20. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse.
That last part there is the key.
Right. So basically, the Bible is saying that the existence of God is so self-evident that everyone believes in him, like everybody does. And therefore, the Christian or the theist takes this to mean, well, you, the atheist, say you don't believe, but the Bible has to be right. So therefore, you're wrong.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the other thing with the Christian too, like if a Christian believes the Bible to be inerrant, right? Mm-hmm. And the Bible is saying one thing and an atheist of all things is saying something different, who do you think the Christian's going to believe?
Right. This atheist is lying either to themselves or to the Christian. They're, covering up this belief or whatever the reason is. I've heard many different versions of it. I even had a guy tell me that he found it hard. I mean, he seemed pretty reasonable, but when he said, well, I know that you believe, and quoted this verse, and I was like, but I'm telling you I don't. He's like, well, I find that hard to believe. And I'm like, but like, I'm the world's foremost authority on what I believe. And the thing is, like, that gets me about this is a verse. This is a line of, I mean, I don't even want to call it an argument, but this kind of line is the kind of thing that only works for people who already agree with you. Yeah. Like it feels good. Like you're telling your congregation, well, it doesn't matter if this smart person disagrees with you because deep down they actually believe. But like, I don't know very much with 100% certainty. But one of the things I do know with 100% or whatever the maximum amount of certainty is what's in my own head. Like, I can't know much, but I know what's in there, right?
I don't know much, but I know I don't believe. Yeah.
Right. So if you're saying, well, the Bible says that you actually do believe, then what you've told me is now I know for a fact the Bible is wrong. Like, I don't know much, but I know at least in this one instance, there is no way the Bible could be correct. Like, it's not helping your case.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is this is a conversation ender. Like, if you were even hoping to have a conversation with an atheist and you tell them, nuh-uh, you don't believe, actually, you do believe kind of thing, like, you're done. Like,
but yeah, it's the arrogance is just breathtaking. Like, where do you get off telling me what I think? Like seriously, it would be like, and just imagine how you would feel if you've said this to someone or you're tempted to say this to someone. Just flip it around. Imagine you talked about how you believed in Jesus, and the atheist is like, you don't actually believe. You don't really believe in Jesus. Nobody could believe in that, something like that. It's like, you see how much a douche that atheist sounds like, Well, let me tell you, it sounds just as bad the other way.
Yeah. There's a couple other verses too in the Bible that kind of back this up. The one I was trying to pull up here, I think it was Psalms 14:1. The fool says in his heart, there is no God.
Yep,
they are corrupt. One. They do abominable deeds. There is no one who does good. So like this one doesn't necessarily tie into the you believe, but like when you call somebody a fool, like, yeah.
If your goal is to reach this atheist, reach me and convert me from my heathen ways, this is not a good way to go about it.
Yeah. So stop saying it.
Yeah. Speaking of not saying things, number 2 is, why can't you just keep it to yourself, Mr. Atheist? I mean, it's fine for you to do whatever you want, but how come you have to like talk about it?
Yeah, this is one I experienced personally a lot. So when I first came out, I was still on Facebook and social media, and I admit I fell into the trap of like wanting to share with the world, hey, my newfound atheism, and everybody like, guess what? I found out you're wrong, or I was wrong, blah, blah, blah. I wanted everybody to know. Or I would start getting into debates with people when they would make claims and stuff, about Jesus or God and stuff on Facebook. People came to me and said, why can't you just keep this to yourself? Why can't you just be quiet? Like, it was pretty blatant. But I also thought it was kind of hypocritical because they were the same people who are out there posting like those prayer chain ones, like, share this if you want to get God to give you a blessing or a miracle to happen in your life. It's like,
or donating or tithing or even going themselves to missionaries whose entire job is going and sharing their personal beliefs with people who didn't ask them to.
Yeah, if you ever gave money at your church for the missions fund, that is the exact opposite.
It is this. Now, I want to draw a line. There's a difference between I don't want to talk to you about this and why can't you keep it to yourself? So
yes, much difference.
Religion for many people is a private thing. And so if, we don't want to endorse the stereotypical jerk atheist who, throws in everyone's face, even when it's clear that conversation is not welcome,
right,
because it's important to respect personal boundaries. So we're not talking about that. We're talking on social media or just engaging in a conversation. And it's not you're wrong or I disagree. It's your opinion shouldn't be given air. It's something that you should keep silent or you should be ashamed of or whatever.
Yeah, it's this one always gets me. I mean,
I wonder. So I was watching a Prophet of Zod video in preparation for this, and he was talking about the same thing. And he brought up a point that I thought was interesting. He suspected that some of the people saying this might be saying it because in their mind, it's religion is so benign. There's no harm in it, even if it's not true. And it helps people and makes them feel better. So even if you're right, why would you take that away from someone?
Yeah, I can see that. But I can also see we live in America, so most people we interact with are Christians. But if they had a Muslim friend who was on their, social media or and they were starting to spread, Islamic values and stuff, I can imagine they would easily just say it to them. Why can't you just keep that to yourselves just as much as they would an atheist?
That's true. Yeah. I've definitely seen protests and stuff against the mosques being built, even in my county, which is reasonably progressive.
Right. But it's kind of if you think about it, you have to be very privileged to sit in a position where you don't even see that you're able to spread your beliefs openly without any criticism or any prejudice. I know some Christians have the prejudice complex or their persecution complex, whatever you call it. But
the very idea that it could be a bad thing or criticized for you to spread your faith is so just not even part of their mental landscape. The idea that, oh, you're at work and my boss is religious and she talks about her church all the time, which is fine. She's not pushy about it or anything. She's great. But the idea, it would be kind of me when she's hey, I went to church. I'd be hey, could you not bring up your church ever again because it offends me? The fact that you have that,
why can't you just keep your church to yourself?
Yeah. But it's just so distant. And that just shows, like you said, the privilege of being in the majority. It's the vast majority of people, not just people who being religious, but even people who aren't very religious tend to have a positive view of religion. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of associated with being a good person or being, moral or upholding traditional family values or whatever, feel good thing you want to apply to it. And I think that's what's driving this knee-jerk kind of reaction.
The contrary to this would be hey, Jordan, I see you are posting a lot, or you keep interacting with, Christians about, atheism and raising questions. That's interesting. I'd like to have a conversation with you about that sometime. Could you imagine that?
Right. And again, if your goal is to reach people and if you're supporting missionary work and stuff, it should be, right? You want to save me from hell. Then the atheist, again, not the atheist who's being a jerk, because screw them, but the person
refer to the last podcast.
Right. Refer to the last podcast on that guy. But the people who are just expressing their opinions, trying to engage in a conversation, those are the kind of people who want to have these conversations. You should be able to easily engage that person in a conversation about your specific brand of religiosity. Yeah. So anyways, number 3, on atheism, life is ultimately meaningless.
I love this one. Actually, I don't. Anytime somebody starts off by saying on atheism, I immediately cringe because I know whatever follows after that is just going to be a word salad of something. But yeah,
very little of good is going to come from that.
Yeah. So this one is made popular by, not this one. It's one of William Lane Craig's favorite things. He always says on atheism, life is ultimately meaningless. And I can understand why too, because as human beings, we like to have meaning in things that we do. And like the idea that life has no meaning, like that's it pulls at your emotional heartstrings, you know?
That's scary. Yeah. Now this kind of goes back to the fallacy we talked about. Just even if it were true, it wouldn't say anything at all about whether or not God existed.
Right.
You know?
For example, I really want life to have meaning, therefore God exists.
Or God gives me my life meaning, therefore he exists.
Yeah.
Would be, neither of those are good arguments. Yeah. But to show like what this argument might look like, I pulled up an article written by William Lane Craig. If you don't know who he is, he's a apologist, a philosopher he's a Christian philosopher. And on this article, he said, quote, "If death stands with open arms at the end of life's trail, then what is the goal of life? Is it all for nothing? Is there no reason for life? And what of the universe? Is it utterly pointless? If its destiny is a cold grave in the recesses of outer space, the answer must be yes, it is pointless. This is reality in a universe without God. There is no hope. There is no purpose." Now, then he goes, so I'm not sure I even disagree with that part. Like, if you want to define ultimate meaning as like meaning that persists throughout the entire duration of the universe and beyond, then I don't think my life has that kind of meaning at all. Yeah. Like, I'm pretty confident that in 4 trillion years, there's going to be no sign whatsoever that I ever existed.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. Like,
right. So then he goes on to say, "The point is this: if God does not exist, then life is objectively meaningless. But man cannot live consistently and happily knowing that life is meaningless. So in order to be happy, he pretends that life has meaning." Now this
ding, 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 ding.
This is important. And he kind of does a little switcheroo here. This is an equivocation fallacy, which I'm not sure we've done before. But an equivocation is where you use the same word or a similar word to mean 2 different things, but you don't like state that you're switching meanings.
Yeah, this is a very tricky thing, and he is really good at this. Sometimes I wonder if he's really good at it and he's just doing it because he doesn't realize it, or if he's being deceitful. But
well, it can also be like if the 2 of them are so intertwined in your own head, it can sometimes like you might miss that you switched it. So like, for instance, anyway, let me say what he switched there before I go off on how I messed up. So what he's switching there, he started by talking about ultimate meaning. But then he said, if you don't have ultimate meaning, life is meaningless, which assumes that the only possible type of meaning is ultimate meaning.
Right. You could have simple meaning or like
limited meaning.
Limited meaning, yeah.
Meaning within a certain time frame, you know. And so perhaps William Lane Craig so thoroughly equates ultimate meaning with as the only kind of meaning that matters, that for him, if you don't have ultimate meaning, your life is meaningless. But that's the very question we're talking about. And so what the atheist typically says is that I give my own life meaning. Like I imbue my life with meaning. My life has meaning because I have time. I have a family that I care for and cares for me. And, I do work that I find fulfilling and things like that.
Yeah. But what about ultimate meaning? You can't have ultimate meaning.
And that's true, which I just don't care about.
Yeah.
Like
it's like the whole, like, I mean, this is an argument for God too. Like the fact that, ultimate meaning exists. Like, first of all, you don't know and you can't prove that ultimate meaning exists. Second of all, it doesn't mean that a God exists. But like, so what if there's no ultimate meaning? Like, I don't really care. Like,
well, so when I die, I will cease to exist. So if my life has meaning during the time that I'm alive, and after I die, I don't exist, there's no me to have meaning or not have meaning. That means that my life will have had meaning for 100% of the time that I exist, which is the only part that I can possibly care about. Like, there's no me to care about it anymore after that, right? So, yeah, this one, I don't know. If ultimate meaning is something that bothers you, if the idea that there won't be a sign that you existed after the heat death of the universe is problematic, then maybe this could have some purchase on you. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the Venn diagram of atheists and people who care about ultimate meaning barely overlaps.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Like, if you think about it, this is weird. Like, it's almost like something like Christians, like, teach themselves, right? Like, they teach themselves that life has to have meaning outside of themselves, and then fill in that hole with God. Whereas like you said, most atheists really don't Like they all have their own meaning they prescribe to life, like, and they're completely satisfied and content with it, and it doesn't bother them. But the Christians who say this are like freaked out by the idea that there's no ultimate meaning.
I think most people, even most Christians, probably most of the meaning that they derive from life is the same that I have. They care about their family and their job and, the next ball game.
They're just
or whatever.
labeling it ultimate and we're not.
Right, yeah. So, I don't think this objection, it doesn't do much for the atheist. I don't think it means anything really. And I just see no reason that I should care at all about ultimate meaning, whatever the hell that even is.
Yeah. Speaking of ultimate.
I do want to say, though, I don't want to go to Lowe's and get my super broad brush and think that I'm painting all Christians or all theists with this list, because like we talked about last time, no group is monolithic. And so we're not saying that every Christian or every religious person believes or says these things. So if you don't say them, then we're not talking about you. Yeah. These are just things that we hear many Christians, or, well, maybe because we're in America, many Christians, but I've heard other religious people say similar things too. So,
yeah. So the next one is on atheism. ... There is no objective morality. Now this is one.
This is another one that, in terms of like an argument, it's a little bit of wishful thinking, because what it's really saying is, I don't like a world where there's no objective morality, therefore God.
Yeah. This is a popular one too amongst, like apologists and stuff too, because, and they'll pull out like, the arguments like, well, if there's no objective morality, then why is it wrong to rape or murder or torture a baby?
Right. If there's no objective morality, what's stopping you from stabbing people in the street or whatever, insert whatever horrible thing here, or, Hitler was just a person with a different idea or whatever, whatever travesty you want to put in there. First of all, I'd object to the idea that there is objective morality. I'm not certain that that's true. They seem to be just taking it as if it were true.
Yeah.
That if without God, there's no objective morality, but there definitely is objective morality, therefore God, checkmate. But I'm not certain that there is objective morality.
Met that burden of proof yet, in my opinion.
And so by objective here, I presume that they mean like outside of anyone's perceptions. Like,
something that would be wrong at any point in space and time.
Right. Whether or not a human was there to say, or a person in any sort, like rape would be wrong even if no persons existed to be raped, would be like objective morality.
Yeah.
But even deeper than that, I'm not certain that God existing would make morality objective either.
It's subjective to God, right?
Right. So like their objection is that if there is no God, we're just kind of making up what's right and wrong. We're, as a human, either as individuals or as a species or whatever, we are making it up. But if God is the one that's saying what's right and wrong, aren't we just exporting that subject? Like we're just deferring it to the manager, so to speak.
Like God says today that murder is wrong, therefore it's objectively wrong. But tomorrow he could say that murder is good, and therefore it would be objectively good.
He could. Well,
according to them, if God is saying it, then it is, right?
So according to depending on what your conception of God is. But it seems like it would be just as subjective. It would just be subjectively up to this creator, and why does
it's not objective?
why does his subjective morals get to win? Is it because he's super powerful? Certainly he can enforce his will and I can't stop him, but that doesn't make it right. That's the argument made by every dictator since the beginning of time, literally in this case.
This one's weird. And even within the Bible too, it's clear there aren't objective morals based on Old Testament depictions of the Judeo-Christian God.
So this one doesn't have much. I think it's not that a moral argument from God is necessarily useless. It's that you shouldn't assume that objective morality exists. Like you need to demonstrate that, and then you can move on with this argument. Just saying that, well, you wouldn't like it. Well, that's not an argument.
I guess the thing that gets me about these on atheism statements is like they're saying they're using it as a tool to like show how flawed atheism is as a worldview. And your problem is right there. Atheism is not a worldview. Like there's nothing about atheism that says anything about any of these subjects.
Right. Though I do want to touch on one thing you said, though, or right here at the beginning. Often when you get this, it's, well, if there is no objective morality, why is it wrong to rape, or why is it wrong to murder, or whatever? Like, what's stopping you? What's stopping me is empathy and the fact that I'm not a terrible person. Like I wonder when someone says that, is the only reason you're not raping because you think that Jesus wouldn't like it? Like, is that's all that's stopping you?
Because if that's the case, you should just keep on believing in Jesus.
Right. Like, let's stop this conversation. You should go to church. Like I'm already doing all of the rapes I want to do, all of the no rapes that like,
yeah. It's really interesting. Like oh man.
Yeah. I don't know if the person saying that has really thought through the implications for their own worldview. If the only thing that's stopping them is the fact that there's a guy, a bearded man in the sky watching their every move. But anyways, all right. So those that's number 4. Now we're on to number 5. This one we're going to get more into like an evidence-based claim. That's just ridiculous. So this one I got from Voddie, who is, I think, is the source of this one, or at least one of the sources for the people who've thrown it at me. But it is that there's more evidence for Jesus Christ than for Julius Caesar.
Yeah. And just real quick, Voddie is he's like a preacher. He's charismatic. I would call him an apologist, but not really. He's got a huge internet presence, though. Right.
Like William Lane Craig is more, or actually Frank Turek is a better example of an apologist.
Yeah.
Where he tries to be a little bit more formal. Voddie is just a charismatic speaker.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And to be clear, neither Jared or I are mythicists. So we both think that Jesus actually existed. But there is a big difference between, he probably existed, and he's better evidenced than the first person to take over the Roman Empire by force,
Yeah.
So the quote I got for this, and he's made this quote everywhere you can find on YouTube, but I pulled a quote from one of his YouTube videos, Voddie. He said, "There are over 6,000 manuscripts for the New Testament itself. Now that may not sound a lot to you, but Julius Caesar and his Gallic Wars, that's how we know about Julius Caesar and his conquests. We have around 10 manuscripts. Folks, that's not even close. When it comes to Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars, the earliest thing we can put our hands on was written 900 years after the original, but nobody is tearing down the walls in college because they're reading Caesar." Basically, there's way more manuscripts of the New Testament which attest to Jesus than there are for this particular book of the Gallic Wars. Therefore, the New Testament wins the manuscript contest, and so it's better.
It's better attested. And he goes into the dates too, we have earlier writings for the New Testament. But.
So the point he's trying to make, that if we want evidence for something in history, ideally we'd want multiple attestation. We'd want more than one person saying it, and we'd want it to be early if we can. Both of those are good and valid points. However, first of all, the number of manuscripts you have for something does not tell you whether or not it's true. We have a ton of manuscript evidence for Hogwarts and Harry Potter.
Yeah, I could literally just write something on a piece of paper and go down my local Kinko's and just punch out 6,000. I need 6,000 of these right now so I can be right.
Yeah, exactly. So that doesn't tell you anything. Also, what he doesn't say is most of those manuscripts are from centuries after the fact.
Yeah, literally when they had monks sitting there just handwriting all day. That's all they did.
Most manuscript evidence of the New Testament is from the year 1000 and beyond. So that's something that he's not mentioning. But even aside from that, first, we don't get all of our evidence for people in general, but Caesar in particular, from manuscripts. And it's not just when is the earliest copy we have of it. It's when was this thing written?
Yeah.
And so the fact that Mark, for instance, the first gospel was written in 70s CE. That's about 40 years after the fact. That's reasonably close, but still distance of a few decades, right? And the first copy of it we have is a century or two after that. We have a book that Caesar himself wrote Like Caesar, this guy wrote it
during his lifetime.
during his life. Like I mean, it'd be hard for him to write it after his lifetime.
Well, ask Moses. He did it.
That's a good point. So yeah, Caesar wrote the Gallic Wars. So if you're not, I hope everyone listening has at least heard of Caesar. He's not the guy who made the salad. Julius Caesar was the first Roman emperor. Well, I guess technically he wasn't the first Roman emperor. I think his successor, Caesar Augustus, was. But regardless, he's the guy who toppled the Roman Republic, and he's a great general and stuff in Rome. And he conquered Gaul, which is modern day France. And he wrote a report of it for the Senate. It was mostly a propaganda piece, so some of it is thought to be exaggerated, but there's a lot of truth in it. Now, we know he wrote it, and we know he existed from not just that book, but that other people also alive at the time talked about it. So we've got writings from a guy named Cicero, who was a friend of Caesar's. So he lived at the same time. He grew up with this guy. We have another guy, Sallust, who wrote the Catiline Conspiracy. He lived during the lifetime of Caesar, and he was a supporter of Julius Caesar later in his life. We have writings from historian Livy, who lived at the time of Caesar, 59 BC to 17, and he wrote the Life of Caesar during the life of Caesar, So we have tons of writings, not just from Caesar, but other people who knew about this guy.
Who were earlier multiply attested and attested outside of the extra biblical,
right.
So
here we have people who are friends, but also other people outside of this are opponents so we have multiple attestation. You don't get any earlier than contemporary, than at the same time. So already we've beaten the Bible in terms of Jesus. But wait, there's more, because we have whole rooms of coins with Caesar's likeness, coins that are minted commemorating his conquest of Gaul, for example.
We have busts
of the dude. We have busts of Caesar. We have statues of the guy all over the place. There's inscriptions about this guy. Literally, everywhere you look, Caesar is talked about, not just after the fact, but during his life too, because he was super important.
Yeah. Not to mention the fallout. What would have happened with Rome had there not been Caesar, right?
Yeah, that's another great point. So when a historian is looking at evidence, they want to see, multiple attestation. They look at these other criteria. One of the criteria is the course of history. Does this event or this person fit with the course of history? Would history still work without it? Other things we know happened. We know that Rome became an empire, that the Republic fell, that Gaul was conquered. These are things we know outside of these writings. We know it from other archaeological evidence and just the way history worked out. That period of Roman history makes no goddamn sense at all if Caesar didn't exist.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those ones where it's I think it just sounds good to say it. And I don't know if Voddie actually knows that he's full of crap when he's talking about this, or if he just heard somebody else say it and he's just repeating it.
I don't know. He's a pretty educated guy. I don't know. But
even the 6,000 manuscripts, have you seen some of those manuscripts? They're the size of my thumb.
One of them,
125
P52 is a credit card sized piece of John. That's the earliest manuscript we have from the early 2nd century. And it's just a front and back a piece of John, but that is one manuscript. So everything from the entire New Testament to a scrap of paper are both manuscripts.
Yeah. So sure, if you want to rip up your one book and make 6,000 manuscripts, then go for it.
Yeah. So anyway, this is one of those things that sounds really cool if you do no research into it whatsoever. Julius Caesar definitely existed. So yeah, the only reason that these terrible people are saying that, we shouldn't, is because they're biased against Christians or whatever.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I want to say about this is people like Voddie, or Voddie, however you say his name, they typically direct these conversations or these talking points to other Christians. And the reason why I feel like they should stop doing it is because these other Christians believe it and then go and repeat it to other people.
Right. That's an excellent point. So this is another thing that Voddie isn't saying this in a debate with someone who can like he's not going to talk to Bart Ehrman about this,
right?
Because that's not his deal. But
I'd like to see that though. You get crushed.
It would be amazing. But yeah, like you said, I had one of a boss that I used to have, knows I'm an atheist, and he is like, hey, look at this evidence. Isn't this amazing? Like I want you to look into this. And I, of course, tore it apart, and it really offended him. Like he felt bad because I was not kind to Voddie, but I think he felt embarrassed. I think that was why he got so upset.
He took something at face value without being critical or skeptical about it.
And so preachers who are saying things like this are not doing their flock any favors by arming them with this super poor evidence. Like you can make a good case for the existence of Jesus without lying or without using shoddy evidence. Just use the right evidence,
Exactly. Yeah. It's not giving your flock or your parish the tools they need to have a defense for their faith.
Your bishopric.
Yeah. Well, that's like a bishop rook. Or is it a knight? I don't know.
Your group O believers.
Yeah. Your gaggle. Your practitioners.
Yeah. So speaking of bad arguments, let's go on to number 6. Man, just look at the trees, man. Just look at the trees.
Would you just look at it?
What about babies, though?
How could you look at a baby that was just born and tell me there is no God?
Which I swear is something that I've actually been told.
My grandfather told me that. So,
yeah. Or you can't prove love, man. You don't have evidence for love,
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe we do. I don't know.
Who was it? Comedian, song guy. Fuck.
Tim Minchin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Minchin,
he said, love without evidence is just stalking.
Yeah. Well, this one's always, this is the kind of stuff that I hear the most from Christians, because most Christians aren't equipped with your typical apologist arguments. Most Christians don't give a lot of thought to what they're saying, but to them, these are good arguments because they just boom.
Let's be real. Nobody, I imagine very few people, converted or came to their faith because of the Kalam cosmological argument.
That's something you find once you're trying to justify your faith after you have a period of doubt, in my opinion.
Right. It's nobody is feeling worried about the future or, is raised up in a tradition, and it's the cosmological argument that really won them over. Usually, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. Often people come to these beliefs because that's how they were raised up. That it feels good, that they feel a need to direct their sense of gratitude towards a being or whatever. It's these emotional appeals that get them there.
Well, I mean, I can understand that too. I've been out in nature and I've had those awe-inspiring things. Sir Francis Collins, extremely smart dude, literally used this argument to believe in God when he saw the frozen waterfalls.
Right. He saw 3 frozen waterfalls, I believe, and that struck him that was like the Trinity. And there you go. So
one of the smartest dudes ever,
pilot of the Genome Project,
the Human Genome Project. Yeah. And he literally used to just look at the trees argument.
So a lot of things about this. First of all, it's obviously an emotional appeal. Right. And we know that emotions are fallible. They're not a great way to arrive at truth. If you're worried about the truth, if you want to have true beliefs and not false beliefs, then it's not a good idea to base it on, I saw some pretty waterfalls. Not just because it's bad evidence, but because okay, so you felt this sense of purpose or divine touch or whatever. How do you know you picked the right God? There could be some ice waterfall God who's come on, I gave him the waterfall. It's literally my thing. How is he not getting this?
The hurricane God's really pissed. I keep giving him hurricanes and blowing them over.
Come on, Yeah. How many waterfalls do I have to freeze before people realize there's a waterfall God?
How many tornadoes do I got to ravage this town with before the people?
Yeah. So there's no way you could use literally the same experience, and you put someone who was raised in a Muslim country and they look at it and they walk away with a renewed faith in Allah. You know, because there's no substance there. There's no model. There's just nothing there.
Yeah. I mean, so this is a great argument if you want to get a good feeling about yourself and like it makes you feel good to maintain your belief, but it's not something good to say to an atheist because they're going to tear you apart. I mean,
right. It's if it makes you feel better to arrive at your beliefs in this way, then more power to you. I mean, believe whatever you want, but you're not going to convince anyone else, or at least you're not going to convince me.
You know what else you're not going to do? You're not really going to be an atheist because
you're also not going to have good segues.
Damn. All right. Number 7. You're not really an atheist because ...
Usually it's you're not really an atheist because the definition of atheist is someone who believes there is no God. Or sometimes I get told, that they'll argue with me as if that was my position.
Yeah.
And then I have to correct them. It's like, well, no, I'm not saying that there's no God. I just don't believe it. Well, then you're not really an atheist.
Well, I mean, if that's how you define atheist, then I guess I'm not one.
Yeah. I've seen several videos by people we know who have dedicated hours to trying to argue this point. Usually the argument goes something like, well, if you go into a philosophy of religion journal, this is how they define atheist. To which I respond, well, I didn't realize I was speaking to a philosophy of religion journal.
Yeah. and if that's your definition, then okay. But I'm telling you what the atheist, like, this is how I define myself. Like,
right. Yeah. And the thing is, so as we've discussed on this channel before, if you talk to an atheist, most atheists today, in fact, I'd say the overwhelming majority of atheists, when they use the term atheist, what they mean is atheist, not a theist. I do not believe.
Right.
There are, which is like called soft atheism or de facto atheism, or we call it agnostic atheism. But there are very, very few atheists who will go as far to say, I believe there are no gods at all.
Right. And typically they have really bad arguments for them. Yeah. But I think we may be on the verge of needing a definition change. We need to call Webster up and be like, yo, Daniel, could you maybe rewrite this definition for us?
Right. Because words are defined by the usage. A word means how it's used to mean, And so if...
Figuratively.
Or literally, if every atheist or virtually every atheist is using the term atheist to mean this, then that's what it means. Yeah. And even deeper than that, okay, you don't think that that's the right quote usage of atheist, okay, but you should know that if you're going to talk to an atheist, that's not the label they're using. Like that, that they're not using the word. So why, rather than drawing this line in the sand and saying, no, the label you take for yourself is wrong, like, why waste time with that? It's so arrogant.
Yeah, and if you flip it back on them, like, you're not really a Christian because a Christian means blah, blah, blah. Like,
you got a divorce and the Bible says you can't do that. So you're not really a Christian.
You're not really a Christian because you're a Southern Baptist, and everybody knows that, Southern Baptist, if you're not.
Right. Or even more broadly, something we mentioned in the last video. Well, you're wrong when you say that faith means trust. Faith actually means this other thing. Well, no. The person who's telling you says that when they say faith, they mean this thing. So just go with that. Well, me as the atheist, I'm telling you, when I say atheist, I mean I don't believe in God. Just go with it, man. Yeah. Don't be a jerk.
Yeah. So stop saying it because it pisses me off.
Right. Yeah. I would really like it if you didn't say that anymore.
Yeah. You know what else pisses me off?
So speaking of faith, though, here's number 8. It takes more faith to be an atheist, or I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, as Frank Turek, the apologist, likes to say it at a very rapid pace.
Oh, Frankie boy.
Yeah. So he has like a whole line of merch. Like, this is his tagline. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. I'm pretty sure he wrote a book with that title. Like, this is his whole deal. And usually this is coupled with something like, you believe that the universe just came about by chance, or that life just arose from nothing, or whatever crazy thing. Well, I just don't have enough faith to believe that. Yeah. Is usually how it comes up.
Well, in order to actually have faith in something, we'd have to be making a claim, right?
I guess so. I can't imagine I have faith that my negation is right. I'm not sure how that would work.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, am I making a claim that there is no God?
Well, as we just discussed, the answer to that is no.
Well, if that's the case, then, nobody's saying that. So, I mean, I have no claim to make a faith in.
The burden of proof.
I have no faith to make a claim. Anyways, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The burden of proof is on the person, the religious person. So I'm not saying that the universe came from nothing. I'm not saying this all happened by chance. It didn't happen by chance, by the way. Happening by natural processes is not the same as happening by chance. There's a 9 or an 8A that we can put in there. This evolution happened by chance. It didn't happen by chance. Anyway,
yeah, there's a bunch of assumptions made in these claims. First of all,
but yeah, and also it's kind of used as a gotcha too. Like, oh, you don't believe in God, really? Well, then how did the universe come to exist? Well, I don't know, man. How the hell should I know? Like, I'm not a cosmologist. The cosmologists don't know. Like, I don't know. But there's a difference. See, I say I don't know, therefore I don't know. Whereas the theist is saying, I don't know, therefore I do know, and it's God.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that drives me crazy about I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Like, the same people use faith as like it's the bee's knees, right? Like,
right.
It's their reason for everything. I just have faith. You just got to have faith.
Got to have faith. It's a good thing, man. Like blessed is the one who believes without seeing. Like, yeah. Faith is
you're
legit.
Making fun of me because you don't have enough faith. Well, I don't get it.
Like, so I have more faith. Like get on my level, bro. Yeah. I think it's mainly because most atheists would say that faith is a bad thing, so they are turning it around that way. But also, this plays into the, I don't want to say misuse, but the confusion about the word faith. Because I've had Christians tell me that faith doesn't mean belief without evidence. It means like trust or something, which fine. They want to use the definition.
That's their definition, sure.
That's cool, no problem. But then they'll turn around and say, well, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. In this case, meaning belief without lack of evidence, like believing without evidence. Like, which is it? Pick one and go with it.
You got to pick. You can't be switching and choosing here for your own benefit.
Right. Yeah. So, again, if you want to make a claim that God exists, then show evidence for that claim. Running into a random person on the street, that person being unable to explain complex cosmology to you is not evidence that you're correct.
Yeah. I mean, this one kind of gets back into that emotional thing too. Like, we don't want to think that this all just happened by chance. Like, but we're assuming that it did happen by chance when we say it. And then, so they're making it seem like it's all, oh my gosh, like, well, if it...
It also displays ignorance of
science.
Modern scientific understanding. Like, things like, well, I don't have enough faith to believe in the Big Bang when that's pretty well evidenced at this point, stuff like that.
Yeah.
We could do a whole episode on the Big Bang. Maybe we will. But anyway, so we did 9 for the atheist. So now we're on the last one for the religious person, number 9.
Number 9.
Y'all just want to sin. Y'all just need Jesus.
Y'all need Jesus. Yeah.
I had a person who I went to school with, BCU, and it came up in conversation. I don't remember exactly how, but I think he asked me what I believed, and I told him I was an atheist. And he asked me why, and I said, well, I haven't been given sufficient evidence to believe that there's a God. And he's like, are you sure that's it? Like, are you sure there's just not stuff you wanted to do, but you didn't want God telling you not to? So you're
Somebody
an atheist?
Actually told you that?
Yep. Right.
Wow.
Right hand of the flying spaghetti monster. Yep. And I just kind of let the conversation lapse because there was no reason to continue it. But yeah, for real. Like, he straight up told me that the reason I'm an atheist is not because of any kind of intellectual understanding like I told him it was. it's because I'm a bad person who wanted to sin.
So I've never had anybody be that blatant with it, but I have had people kind of like beat around the bush, like, well, there must have been something, that you were doing, or, like you feel guilty about, like trying to not come out and say like, but they clearly intended to say like, you just want to sin.
So a couple things on this. First of all, sin is awesome.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy it. Particularly like not honoring the Sabbath. I love not honoring the Sabbath. It's great.
Bacon, that's sin.
Depending on, whether you want to go with old or new.
Well, speaking of which, real quick, I would challenge you to ask a Christian exactly what sin is. Like, what is sin? I bet you would get 300 different answers from 200 Christians.
But more deeply, like, first of all, this is kind of tying back to our first one, because you don't choose to believe or not, really. Like, you either do or you don't. You're either convinced or you're not. You don't really decide to be convinced. You just are.
Belief is a subset of knowledge.
Right. So if you're telling me that you are an atheist because you just want to sin, what you're telling me is, I know that there's a God that has rules and I don't like them. So I am not admitting that I believe.
Yeah. So wait, this one encompasses the other one. You really know there's a God, but you're suppressing it so you can sin.
Exactly. So I can at least feel good about my sinning. But like, if I don't believe in God, then I don't believe, like, then sin doesn't matter. It's like that sketch from Austin Archer. He's like, you can't do that. Why not? Well, this book I like a lot says you can't do it. Oh, well, I don't care about that. It's like that.
Well, here's another thing too. When I was a Christian, I literally had conversations with myself in my head saying like, I wanted to do something that I thought was sinful at the time. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do it and ask for forgiveness later. Like, because I knew I could, right? So like, I didn't have to be an atheist to sin. I just did it anyways. Like,
that's true. That's true. Yeah. I'm approximately as moral now as I ever was.
Yeah. I'm not saying that the thing I wanted to do was like bad. I mean, at the time I did, but now it wasn't. So
So
yeah.
Look, the bottom line here, and with the first one, is if somebody tells you that they believe something because of X, Y, and Z, unless you have a really, really good reason to not believe them, just believe them. Like,
yeah.
Like, how do you know? Like, how could you possibly know why I believe something?
Or even better, even if you don't believe them, don't tell them this. Like,
if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
There you go. Yeah, Thumper's mom would be proud of you.
I wonder, like, what the end game is. Like, what is the expected response when the person, for instance, the person that I spoke to at college, what did he think I was going to say? Like,
you're right. I repent and I'm a Christian.
I have heard the good news. Hallelujah. Like, does anyone honestly believe that's what's going to happen?
Yeah. What step on the Romans roads is this one? Like, y'all just want to sin.
I just don't see the end game to this, to this thing.
Oh man.
I don't know. At the end of the day, join the dark side because we have cookies. Like, yeah.
Cookies.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it for these ones. This was a fun one to do. It was really easy to come up with this list because we've heard all of these or most of them between the two of us quite often, actually. So it didn't take that much thought. But
what we really want is to elevate the conversation. Mm-hmm. Right. Let's dispense with these bad arguments, and so we can focus on the good ones. Because if I'm wrong about there not being a God, or about, if there is actually evidence for God and I'm not aware of it, I want to know. Like, I would love to know. I'm not certain if I would become a Christian, but I would stop being an atheist. That's for sure. So if you want to convince me or you want to convince your family, then better arguments is better. And if you want to at least have a productive relationship, maybe don't be a jerk.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For me, I love being right. I've loved being right my entire life. And If I'm wrong, I want to be right.
Well, you know what the best thing is about being skeptical, about being a skeptic? If you're wrong, you just change your mind, and then poof, like magic, you're not wrong anymore.
It's amazing. It's a good feeling too.
Yeah. Boom. You on a dime, you suddenly stop being wrong. It's great. So, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Jared and I were talking yesterday about how, like, we hate this, like, comment, and subscribe, but it really does help the channel if you give us feedback, not just because we want to hear how we're doing. If we're doing something that we could be doing better, or you guys are more interested in a different topic, we genuinely want to hear that. And it also helps the channel if you share it to your friends, if you think that they might get value out of it, if you got value out of it, help us reach more people. And if you don't like it, tell us so. Like I said, we always enjoy criticism. And if there's something you'd like us to cover, some topic, whether it's religious or not, because we do half our episodes are related to religion, the other half are more general conspiracy theory stuff. So whichever one it is, we'll get to it if you let us know. You can reach us on Facebook at facebook.com/reason to doubt. We are on Twitter now. The handle is pressx_to doubt. And we have a YouTube channel. You can find us there too if you prefer that platform. Though, as I'm saying that, I realize that if you prefer that, you're almost definitely listening to this on YouTube. So it's kind of a waste of time for me to tell you.
Yeah, that's all right. The bottom line is we just want to spread the good word. And the good word is skepticism.
Right. The good word is you don't know. We don't know, at least, anyway. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys. And until next time, remember, you always have reason to doubt.
Peace out.